The Galactic Empire of the Varanthi had existed for 40,000 years. They ruled over 3,000 star systems. Their ships were so large that they could block out the light of entire suns. Their armies had trillions of soldiers. Every species they had ever met had fallen to their knees and begged for mercy. Ambassador Kethveril was one of their most respected diplomats. He had personally watched over 200 civilizations surrender to the Empire. He knew exactly how first contact worked. First came the fear, then came the panic, then came the desperate attempts to fight back, and finally, always, came the surrender. When the Empire's scouts found a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, Kethveril was sent to handle the situation. It was supposed to be simple. The planet was called Earth, and its people were called humans. Their technology was primitive. They had barely left their own moon. They would be easy to absorb into the Empire. Kethveril arrived in Earth's orbit with 17 warships. Each ship was the size of a small moon. They cast shadows across entire continents as they positioned themselves around the planet. It was an impressive display of power. It always worked. He sent the standard message to the planet below. The message explained who the Varanthi were. It explained that the Empire was offering them a chance to surrender peacefully. It explained what would happen if they refused. The message was translated into every human language and broadcast, across every channel on the planet. Then Kethveril waited for the response. He expected panic. He expected world leaders to contact him within minutes, begging for terms. He expected military forces to scramble in useless preparation for a fight they could not win. None of that happened. One day passed. Then 2 days. Then 3 Kethveril's officers began to whisper among themselves. Perhaps the humans had not received the message. Perhaps their primitive technology had failed to understand it. Perhaps they were so terrified that they had simply frozen in place. On the 4th day, a response finally came. The screen flickered to life, and Kethveril found himself looking at a single human female. She was sitting at a desk covered in papers. Her hair was messy. Her clothes were wrinkled. She was holding a cup filled with some kind of steaming brown liquid. She yawned. Kethveril blinked all 4 of his eyes. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. Sorry about the delay, the human said. Her voice was casual, almost bored. We had to check if this was in our budget. Budget. Kethveril did not fully understand the word, but he understood enough. This human was talking about money, about resources, about paperwork. She was facing the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and she was worried about administrative matters. I am Ambassador Kethveril of the Eternal Varanthi Empire, he said, trying to regain control of the situation. Your world has been selected for integration into our glorious civilization. You will submit peacefully, and your people will serve the Empire. Resistance is not advised. The human took a sip of her drink. She did not look impressed. Yeah, we got your message, she said. We forwarded it to the relevant department. The relevant department, Kethveril repeated. Look, the human continued. We are a bit busy down here right now. There is a football championship happening this week. Honestly, people are more interested in that than in your ships. Can you come back in maybe 2 weeks? The transmission ended. Kethveril stood frozen in place. His officers stared at the blank screen. No one spoke for a very long time. In 40,000 years, no species had ever asked the Varanthi Empire to reschedule. No species had ever mentioned that they were too busy with a sporting event to deal with their own potential conquest. No species had ever looked at 17 moon-sized warships and responded with a yawn. One of his communications officers. He made a strange sound. It might have been a laugh. He quickly disguised it as a cough when Kethveril turned to look at him. Ambassador, his second-in-command said carefully. What should we do? Kethveril had no idea. There was no protocol for this. The standard procedures assumed that species would react with fear, with aggression, or with desperate negotiation. There was nothing in the diplomatic handbook about being told to wait because of a ball game. We wait, he finally said. 2 weeks. Then we contact them again. His officers looked at each other. Some of them seemed confused. Others seemed almost amused. One of them was already writing a report for High Command, and Cathveril dreaded what that report would say. Over the next 2 weeks, the Varanthi fleet remained in orbit around Earth. They watched the planet below. They monitored human communications. They tried to understand these strange creatures who did not seem to understand that they were supposed to be afraid. The humans went about their daily lives as if nothing had happened. They went to work. They went to school. They argued about politics and sports and entertainment. The football championship happened, and billions of them watched and cheered. Some of them posted pictures of the Varanthi fleet on their global communication networks. Treating it like a mild curiosity rather than an existential threat, Cathveril watched all of this with growing confusion. One human had written, "Aliens are cool, but did you see that goal in the second half?" Another had posted, "Okay, but what if the aliens are just really lost? Someone should give them directions." A third had created an image that showed Cathveril's flagship with a large red clown nose attached to it. This image had been shared millions of times. Cathveril had conquered worlds. He had brought entire civilizations to their knees. He had stood before emperors and kings and watched them tremble, but he had never in his long life been treated as a joke. As the 2 weeks came to an end, Cathveril prepared for the next round of negotiations. He told himself that things would be different this time. He would make the humans understand the seriousness of their situation. He would make them fear the Empire. Deep down, however, a small part of him was beginning to wonder if these humans were unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. Not because they were powerful, not because they were advanced, but because they simply did not seem to care, and that, more than any weapon or army, was something Cathveril had no idea how to fight against. 2 weeks passed exactly as the human had requested. Cathveril counted every single day. He spent those days studying the humans, trying to understand them, trying to find some weakness he could use. He found nothing that made sense. When the time came for the official meeting, Cathveril made sure to bring an impressive delegation. He brought 7 of his best warriors, each one standing over 7 feet tall and wearing ceremonial armor that had been polished until it shone like mirrors. He brought 3 psionic advisors who could read minds and sense emotions. He brought himself dressed in the finest robes of the Empire. With all his medals and honors displayed on his chest, they transported down to a human building that the humans called a conference center. It was a plain, boring structure made of glass and concrete. Cathveril had negotiated in golden palaces and crystal towers. This building looked like it was designed for selling office supplies. Inside the conference room, 5 humans were waiting for them. 5 against the might of the Varanthi Empire. The humans had sent 5 people. Cathveril studied them carefully. One was a middle-aged man in a slightly wrinkled suit. He seemed to be the leader. Another was a young woman typing something on a small device and not looking up. A third was an older man who appeared to be asleep, his chin resting on his chest. A fourth was a young man eating something from a paper bag. It smelled like fried food. The fifth was a woman who was arranging papers and looked like she would rather be anywhere else. The leader stood up and extended his hand. Cathveril knew this was a human greeting gesture. He did not take it. Right then, the man said, not seeming offended at all, "I am Davies, Deputy Assistant to the Undersecretary of Extraterrestrial Affairs. Welcome to Earth." Cathveril had never heard of such a title. It sounded complicated and unimportant at the same time. He suspected the humans had created this position specifically for this meeting, perhaps just to insult him. "I am Ambassador Cathveril of the Eternal Varanthi Empire," he announced. "I have come to accept your unconditional surrender." Davy sat back down and looked at his colleagues. The sleeping man did not wake up. The one eating food offered some of his fried items to the Varanthi warrior standing closest to him. The warrior stepped back as if he had been offered poison. "Okay," Davies said slowly. "And what exactly do you want from us if we surrender?" "Everything," Cathveril replied. "Your resources, your technology, your labor force, your eternal loyalty and service to the Empire. Your planet will become a territory of the Varanthi, and your people will work for our glory." Davies nodded as if Keth Verrill had just explained the weather. He turned to the woman arranging papers. "Did you get that?" he asked her. "Got it," she said without looking up. "Resources, technology, labor, loyalty, standard conquest package, right?" Davies turned back to Keth Verrill. "Here is our counteroffer. We give you nothing. You take your ships and leave. And we all pretend this awkward little interaction never happened. How does that sound?" Keth Verrill felt his skin change color with anger. His species did that when they were upset. The psionic advisors beside him shifted uncomfortably. "You would dare refuse the Empire?" he said, his voice rising. "Also," Davies continued, completely ignoring Keth Verrill's anger, "I should mention that our internet people have been having a lot of fun with your fleet." He pulled out a small device and pressed something on the screen. Then he turned it around so Keth Verrill could see. On the screen was an image of the Varanthi fleet. But something was wrong. The mighty warships, each one capable of destroying planets, had been changed. Someone had edited the images to make the ships look like small yellow rubber toys that human children played with in water. "This has 8 million views," Davies said. "It is trending, whatever that means. My daughter explained it to me, but I still do not really understand these things." Keth Verrill stared at the screen. His flagship, his beautiful and terrible flagship, had been given cartoon eyes and an orange beak. It looked ridiculous. It looked like a joke. One of the psionic advisors made a strange choking sound. Through their mental link, Keth Verrill could feel that she was desperately trying not to laugh. The feeling of barely controlled amusement was spreading through his entire delegation. "This is an act of war," Keth Verrill said. His voice was shaking now, though he was not sure if it was from anger or from something else entirely. "No," Davies replied calmly. "This is the internet. War requires paperwork. And honestly, looking at your fleet, I am not sure you filled out the correct forms before arriving. Did you register your vessels with any local authority? Do you have the proper documentation for carrying weapons of mass destruction? These things matter, you know." The sleeping man suddenly snorted and woke up. He looked around in confusion. "Did I miss anything?" he asked. "Not really," said the woman with the papers. "They want us to surrender." He said no. "They are upset about the rubber duck thing." The man nodded as if this was perfectly normal. "Carry on then," closed his eyes and went back to sleep. Keth Verrill had been a diplomat for 300 years. He had negotiated with warrior kings and hive queens and machine intelligences. He had never been so completely confused and frustrated in his entire life. "You do not seem to understand your situation," he said, trying one more time. "We have enough firepower in orbit to turn your entire planet into dust. We have conquered thousands of worlds. You cannot possibly hope to defeat us." Avies shrugged. "Maybe not. But have you considered that defeating us might not be worth the trouble? We are very annoying. We make memes about everything. We will probably start selling merchandise with your face on it. There might already be a song about you. I would check, but I am afraid of what I might find." He leaned forward slightly. "Ambassador, I am going to be honest with you. We do not want a war. Wars are expensive and messy and bad for everyone. But we also do not want to surrender. So maybe we can find some middle ground here. Some kind of arrangement that lets everyone walk away happy, or at least not completely miserable." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Keth Verrill felt something other than confusion and frustration. He felt a tiny spark of respect for this strange, casual, utterly disrespectful species. They were not afraid. They were not impressed. They treated the most powerful empire in the galaxy like a minor inconvenience. And somehow, that made them more dangerous than any enemy Keth Verrill had ever faced. "I will consult with my superiors," he finally said.
"Ah, wonderful,"
Davies replied with a smile. "Take your time. We are not going anywhere. Well, except for lunch. It is almost noon, and the cafeteria here makes excellent sandwiches." He stood up and stretched. "Let us know when you want to talk again. You have our number, or frequency, or whatever you call it." The meeting was over. Keth Verrill had come expecting surrender. He was leaving with nothing but questions and a growing headache. As he walked back to the transport, he heard one of his warriors whisper to another, Did you see that fried food? It smelled incredible. Kethverell pretended not to hear. But secretly, he had noticed the smell too, and he hated himself for being curious about it. The Varanthi High Command was not happy with the situation on Earth. They had watched the recordings of the negotiations. They had seen the rubber duck images that were now spreading across the galaxy. They had heard the reports of human indifference to the Empire's power. Their response was simple. They wanted a demonstration of force. Kethverell received his orders directly from the High Admiral herself. He was to select a target in the human solar system, something uninhabited, and destroy it completely. This would show the humans what the Empire was capable of. This would make them understand that the Varanthi were not to be mocked. Kethverell chose a small moon orbiting one of the outer planets. It was nothing but rock and ice. No life existed there. Its destruction would not harm anyone, but it would prove a point. He announced the demonstration publicly. He sent messages to every government on Earth explaining what was about to happen. He told them to watch carefully and remember what they saw. The human response came within an hour. It was not what he expected. It was an invitation to a live stream. Kethverell did not fully understand what a live stream was, but his communications officers explained it. Apparently, some humans were going to broadcast the destruction of the moon across their entire global network. Anyone could watch. Anyone could comment. Despite his better judgment, Kethverell decided to observe this broadcast. He wanted to see how the humans would react when they finally understood that Empire's power. The stream began with two young human males sitting on a worn piece of furniture in a small room. They were surrounded by packages of food and containers of drinks. Behind them was a large screen showing the Varanthi fleet moving into position near the target moon. "All right, everyone, welcome back to the stream," said the first human. He was wearing a faded shirt with some kind of graphic on it. "Big day today. We are watching some aliens blow up a moon. This should be pretty awesome." "Chad is already placing bets on the explosion color," said the second human, looking at something off-screen. "Current odds are 3-1 for orange. Some people are saying purple, but I think that is wishful thinking." Kethverell watched in disbelief as numbers appeared on the side of the screen. Humans were joining the broadcast by the thousands. Then by the tens of thousands, then by the hundreds of thousands. All of them were there to watch the destruction of a celestial body, and they were treating it like entertainment. The comments scrolled past faster than Kethverell could read. "This is so cool. Aliens are real, and they are mad at us. Classic humans. I hope the explosion is big. Go big or go home. Did anyone bring snacks? This needs snacks." The Varanthi fleet reached its position. The flagship began to charge its main weapon. This was a beam of concentrated antimatter, one of the most destructive forces in the known universe. It had shattered planets. It had ended civilizations. The two humans on the stream leaned forward with excitement. "Here it comes," said the first one. "Everyone get ready." The weapon fired. A beam of pure white light shot across space and struck the moon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire moon cracked apart. Fire erupted from the fractures. The rock and ice exploded outward in all directions. A massive cloud of debris expanded into space, glowing orange and white with heat. The humans watching went wild. "Orange. Yes, let's go," screamed the first streamer, jumping out of his seat. "Chat wins. Everyone who bet on orange, collect your points." The second streamer was already pulling up some kind of digital image. "Okay, but let us be honest here. That was maybe a 6 out of 10. I have seen better explosions. Remember the Krellock's Hegemony's planet cracker from those old archive videos? That one was way more impressive." True, his companion agreed, sitting back down. The Varanthi really need to work on their presentation. This felt very last century. Not enough style. He had just destroyed a moon. He had demonstrated power that could end worlds. And these humans were criticizing his presentation style. The comments continued to scroll. 7 out of 10. Decent, but not amazing. My fireworks last summer were more colorful. The aliens need a better special effects team. Can they do another one? I missed the first 5 seconds. One comment made Kethverell's blood run cold. So anyway, when are we going to invite them to the cookout? They seemed fun. They seemed fun. He had just destroyed a celestial body, and the humans thought the Varanthi seemed fun. The stream continued for another hour. The two humans discussed the explosion in detail. They compared it to other famous explosions in human history and fiction. They rated the Varanthi fleet's design aesthetics. They wondered what kind of music the aliens listened to at one point. They started a poll asking their audience whether the Varanthi were more likely to enjoy rock music or classical music. Rock music won by a large margin. Kethveril ordered the stream to be turned off. He could not watch anymore. His psionic advisor approached him carefully. She had been monitoring the emotional state of the human viewers throughout the broadcast. "Ambassador," she said quietly, "I have analyzed the feelings of the humans watching the demonstration, and—" Kethveril asked. "They were not afraid," she said. "Not even a little. Some were excited. Some were amused. Some were bored, but fear? There was almost none. A few individuals felt mild concern, but it was quickly replaced by curiosity and interest." She paused. "Ambassador, I have scanned the minds of hundreds of species during moments of crisis. I have felt their terror, their despair, their desperate hope. These humans feel none of those things. They watched us destroy a moon, and their primary emotion was entertainment." Kethveril sat down heavily in his command chair. "What are they?" he asked quietly. "I do not know," the advisor admitted. "But I am beginning to think they might be too insane to conquer." The next day, the humans sent a formal message to the Varanthi fleet. It was not a surrender. It was not a declaration of war. It was a request. They wanted to know if the Varanthi would be willing to do another demonstration, this time with better camera angles. Because some of the footage had been slightly blurry and the internet was complaining about video quality, Kethveril did not respond. He spent the next 3 days alone in his quarters, trying to understand how a species could be so completely unimpressed by the power that had brought 3,000 star systems to their knees. He did not find an answer, but he was beginning to realize that force alone would not be enough. To make these humans submit, he needed a new strategy. Unfortunately, he had no idea what that strategy should be. High Command sent new orders. They wanted an immediate ground invasion, overwhelming force, total conquest. They were tired of waiting. They were tired of being mocked. They wanted results. Kethveril began preparing his forces. He would land troops in every major city. He would capture the human leaders. He would take control of their communication systems and their governments. The invasion would be swift and complete. But before he could begin, something unexpected happened. A small human cargo ship requested permission to approach the Varanthi fleet. It was not a military vessel. It was a trading ship, old and worn, carrying goods from Earth to some outer colony. The captain claimed to have gotten lost and wanted to ask for directions. Kethveril suspected a trap, but the ship was unarmed. Scans showed nothing dangerous on board, and he was curious. Perhaps he could learn something useful from these humans before the invasion began. He allowed the ship to dock with his flagship. The captain was a cheerful woman named Yuki. She was short and friendly and smiled constantly. She seemed delighted to be aboard a Varanthi warship, as if she had been invited to a party rather than captured by a potential enemy. "This is amazing," she said, looking around at the massive corridors of the flagship. "Your ship is so big. How do you not get lost?" "We have maps," Kethveril said flatly. "Smart, smart." Yuki nodded enthusiastically. "Hey, since I am here anyway, do you want to see what I am carrying? I've got some really good stuff. Earth products. Very popular everywhere." Against his better judgment, Kethveril agreed to inspect her cargo. The cargo bay of her small ship was filled with boxes and containers of various sizes. Yuki opened them one by one, explaining each item with obvious pride. "This is coffee," she said, showing him a bag of dark beans. "It is a drink. Makes you feel awake and alert. Very addictive, but in a good way. This is chocolate." She held up a wrapped bar. Sweet food. Everyone loves it. Trust me, these are movies. She pointed to a stack of small discs. Entertainment. Stories with pictures and sound. We have comedies, dramas, action, romance, everything you could want. And this. She pulled out a small, colorful object. This is a fidget spinner. I have no idea what it does, but people cannot stop buying them. Keth Verrill looked at the collection of items. None of them were weapons. None of them were technology. They were just things, products, goods for trade. Why would we want any of this? He asked. YUKI shrugged. You will not know until you try. Here. She handed him a cup of the coffee she had already prepared. Just taste it. Keth Verrill stared at the cup. This was clearly a mistake. He should have this human arrested. He should throw her off his ship. He should begin the invasion immediately. Instead, he took a sip. The effect was immediate. His eyes widened. His mind seemed to sharpen. A warmth spread through his body. It was delicious. It was invigorating. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. Good, right? Yuki grinned. Keth Verrill did not answer. He was too busy drinking the rest of the cup. That was how it began. Within a week, coffee had spread throughout the Varanthi fleet. Officers who had been tired and irritable were suddenly alert and productive. Soldiers who had been bored during the long wait were now energized and focused. The ship's efficiency increased by 30%, but coffee was only the beginning. YUKI had been allowed to stay on the flagship, officially as a guest, but really because no one wanted her to leave. She was friendly. She was funny. She made everyone feel comfortable. And she kept sharing more human products. The movies were next. Someone found a way to display them on the ship's entertainment systems. At first, only a few curious officers watched. Then more joined. Then everyone was watching. The Varanthi had their own forms of entertainment, but nothing like this. Human stories were wild and emotional and unpredictable. Characters fell in love and broke apart and fought against impossible odds. There was drama and comedy and action and tragedy. Sometimes, all in the same story. Within 2 weeks, half the fleet was secretly binge-watching something called soap operas. These were long stories with many episodes, filled with relationship drama and shocking twists. Hardened warriors who had killed thousands wept openly as fictional characters experienced heartbreak. Officers quoted favorite lines during briefings. Someone started a book club. The chocolate became a valued currency. Soldiers traded duties for small pieces of it. Officers gave it as rewards for exceptional performance. The ship's cook learned to incorporate it into the standard meals. The fidget spinners sold out in 3 days. No one understood why they were so satisfying to use, but everyone agreed that they were. Senior commanders were spotted spinning them during important meetings. Keth Verrill watched all of this happen with growing horror. He had meant to invade Earth. Instead, Earth had invaded him. Finally, he confronted Yuki in the corridor outside his quarters. She was carrying a box of something called board games that she claimed would be perfect for crew bonding exercises. "What are you doing to my fleet?" he demanded. "Nothing." Yuki smiled brightly. "We are just sharing." "That is what friends do." "We're not friends," Keth Verrill said. "We are your conquerors. Are you, though?" Yuki tilted her head. "Because according to my sales figures, you have purchased 300,000 fidget spinners. Your admiral is wearing a baseball cap." She pointed down the corridor. "Your elite guard has started a fantasy football league. They asked me to explain the rules yesterday." Keth Verrill looked down at himself and froze. He was wearing a t-shirt. A human t-shirt? It said, "I survived first contact, and all I got was this lousy shirt," in bright letters across the chest. He had no memory of putting it on. How did this happen? He whispered, "Wayuka," patted his arm sympathetically. "Human culture is very contagious. Do not worry. Everyone adjusts eventually. Have you tried pizza yet? I think you would really like pizza." "What is pizza?" "Oh, you are going to love it. Come on, let me show you." Keth Verrill followed her. He did not know why. He should have been planning the invasion. He should have been coordinating with High Command. He should have been doing his duty. Instead, he spent the next 3 hours learning about pizza. It was circular. It was covered in cheese and various toppings. It was cooked in an oven until the edges were crispy. It was, he had to admit, absolutely delicious. That night, Keth Farrell sat alone in his quarters, eating a slice of pizza while watching a human movie about a robot that learned to love. He was wearing comfortable human clothing. He was drinking his 4th cup of coffee. He was wondering what had happened to his life 3 months ago. He had been a feared diplomat of the greatest empire in the galaxy. Now he was arguing with his officers about which pizza toppings were best and whether the romantic subplot in the latest soap opera was believable. The invasion had been postponed, then postponed again, then quietly forgotten. Somewhere on the ship, his warriors were learning human card games. His psionic advisors were reading human novels. His communications officers were downloading human music. The humans had not defeated the Varanthi through weapons or technology. They had defeated them with pizza and wheats. Coffee and entertaining stories. And Keth Farrell was starting to think that might be the most terrifying thing of all. 6 months had passed since the Varanthi fleet first arrived at Earth. 6 months since Ambassador Keth Farrell had expected a quick and easy conquest. 6 months since everything had gone wrong in ways he never could have predicted. Now he stood before the Varanthi, High Council on the homeworld. The journey back had taken 2 weeks, and during that time, Keth Farrell had prepared his report. He had practiced it dozens of times. He knew that what he was about to say would change everything. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of the Empire's most powerful leaders sat in rising rows of seats, all of them watching him with cold, unblinking eyes. The High Admiral herself was present, her expression hard and unforgiving. They had all seen the reports. They all knew about the rubber duck incident. They all wanted answers. Keth Farrell cleared his throat and began. "Honored members of the council," he said, "I come before you to deliver my final report on the Earth situation." The chamber was silent. Every eye was focused on him. "The humans cannot be conquered." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The High Admiral raised one hand, and silence returned. "Explain," she commanded. Keth Farrell took a deep breath. "The humans are not powerful," he continued. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their weapons cannot harm our ships. Their military forces are primitive compared to our legions. In any direct confrontation, we would destroy them utterly." "Then why have you failed?" the High Admiral asked. "'Cause power is not what matters with these creatures." Keth Farrell shook his head slowly. "They cannot be conquered because they simply refuse to take us seriously." He activated a holographic display. Images began to appear, showing everything that had happened over the past 6 months. When we arrived, they asked us to reschedule our invasion because of a sporting event. When we negotiated, they offered us snacks and showed us memes. When we destroyed a moon, they turned it into entertainment and criticized our presentation. The images showed the rubber duck edits, the live stream comments, the humans eating fried food during diplomatic meetings. And then, Keth Farrell said, they invaded us. More images appeared. Varanthi warriors watching human movies with tears in their eyes. Officers gathered around cups of coffee. The Admiral's own flagship crew wearing human clothing and playing human games. They did not use weapons. They used culture. They shared their food and their stories and their music and their strange little spinning toys. Within weeks, our soldiers no longer wanted to fight. They wanted to trade. They wanted to learn. They wanted to be friends. The council chamber was utterly silent now. No one knew how to respond to this. "I have personally overseen the conquest of 200 civilizations," Keth Farrell continued. "I have broken the wills of warrior kings and genius scientists and ancient artificial intelligences. I have never encountered anything like the humans. They are immune to intimidation. They are resistant to fear. They respond to threats with jokes and respond to displays of power with ratings out of 10. He paused, gathering his courage for what he had to say next. "I have in my possession A petition signed by 3 million Varanthi soldiers, 3 million of our own people. They are requesting permanent cultural exchange with Earth. They cite improved quality of life, increased morale, and better understanding of something they call fun. He displayed the petition. The signatures scrolled past endlessly. The humans have not defeated us through force, Keth Farrell concluded. They have defeated us through friendship, mockery, and absolutely unhinged confidence. I recommend immediate withdrawal from the Earth system and the establishment of peaceful trade relations. The High Admiral stood. Her face was unreadable. "You're suggesting," she said slowly, "that the eternal Varanthi Empire, which has ruled for 40,000 years, should surrender to a species that has not even reached its neighboring stars?" "I am suggesting," Keth Farrell replied carefully, "that some battles cannot be won through conventional means. The humans do not fight the way other species fight. They do not think the way other species think. They are chaos in biological form. And sometimes, chaos is more powerful than order." The council deliberated for 17 minutes. Keth Farrell stood and waited, expecting to be arrested, expecting to be executed, expecting to be remembered as the biggest failure in the history of the Empire. Instead, the High Admiral spoke again. "The Council has reached a decision," she announced. "We will withdraw from the Earth system. We will establish trade relations with the humans. We will not speak of conquest again." Keth Farrell felt his legs weaken with relief. "However," the High Admiral continued, "we have one condition. You will personally oversee the cultural exchange program. You seem to have developed an understanding of these creatures. You will use that understanding to ensure that human influence spreads in a controlled manner." Keth Farrell wanted to laugh. Control human influence? That was like trying to control the weather. But he bowed and accepted the assignment. "One more thing," the High Admiral said. "What is this pizza that keeps appearing in the reports?" Keth Farrell smiled for the first time in months. "I will arrange a demonstration," he said. 3 weeks later, back on Earth. Deputy Assistant Davies received official notification that the Varanthi Empire was formally recognizing Earth's sovereignty and requesting trade agreements. He was sitting at his desk eating lunch when the message arrived. He read it, shrugged, and forwarded it to his supervisor. Then he went back to his sandwich. In orbit above Earth, a Varanthi shuttle was landing at a human spaceport. Inside, a warrior named Threlkova was nervously adjusting her uniform. She was part of the first cultural exchange group, assigned to learn about human society. A human was waiting for her at the bottom of the ramp. He was young, with messy hair and a friendly smile. "Welcome to Earth," he said. "I'm Marcus. I'll be your guide. Do you like basketball?" Threlkova had no idea what basketball was, but she found herself smiling back. "I would like to learn," she said. Marcus grinned. "Awesome. We've got a game tonight. I'll teach you the rules. Oh, and afterwards, we're doing karaoke. Can you sing?" "I do not know what that is either." "Perfect. You're going to love it. Trust me." As they walked away together, Threlkova felt something she had never experienced in her 200 years of military service. She felt excited. She felt curious. She felt like something wonderful was about to happen. The Galactic Empire had come to Earth expecting terror and submission. Instead, they found pizza and friendship in something called karaoke. Looking back, Threlkova thought this was probably the better outcome. Far away, on the Varanthi homeworld, Keth Farrell was overseeing the construction of a new building. It was the first human-style restaurant in the Empire's capital city. The sign above the door read Keth Farrell's Pizza Palace in both Varanthi and English. He had retired from diplomacy. He had found a new calling. The grand opening was tomorrow. Representatives from 17 different species had already made reservations. Apparently, word of human food had spread quickly. Keth Farrell looked at the restaurant and smiled. He was wearing a chef's hat and an apron that said "Kiss the Cook" in human writing. He did not fully understand what that meant, but Yuki had told him it was traditional. The humans had come into his life, like a storm, and changed everything. He had never been happier, and somewhere in the galaxy, on a small blue planet that had refused to be afraid, the humans continued their daily lives, completely unaware that they had accidentally become the most influential species in known space. They were too busy arguing about sports and making memes and inventing new pizza toppings too. Notice that was probably for the best. Some things, after all, were better left unchanged.